Hey, Charles here with Rocky Mountain, and today we're going to be showing you how to check and inspect your ignition system on your KTM 50SX. So this is going to include the stator, your ignition coil, and your kill switch. Now with that being said, if you're having issues with no spark, maybe the bike isn't starting when it's hot, or maybe it's cutting out at high RPM, you want to inspect these parts and verify which parts are bad and what needs to be replaced. Now, even though we said KTM 50SX, it's going to work for the GASGAS and Husky models as well. And this is going to be the bikes from 2007 all the way to 2023, but you do want to refer to your model specific service manual throughout the process. One of the first things we need to do is verify whether or not we actually have a problem with the ignition system. I'm going to show you a few different ways to check this, but I'm going to start with the best way to check it first and then give you a couple options if you don't have one of these spark testers. So with that, I've removed the spark plug cap off the spark plug. I have my spark plug tester hooked up and grounded, and I've set the gap to 5 millimeters. That's what the manual calls for. All we need to do now is kick the bike over and verify that we have spark jumping that gap. All right, so we had spark jumping that 5 millimeter gap. That's going to let us know that we have enough available voltage for the spark plug to fire under pressure. Now, if it's not jumping the 5 millimeter gap, that could indicate some problems. You might be able to have the ignition system jump a smaller gap, but if it's not doing that 5 millimeters, you might have some running issues at higher RPMs, things like that. Now, if you don't have the special tool, another way to do this is unscrew your spark plug cap. You're going to hold the spark plug wire about 5 millimeters away from the cylinder head, kick the bike over, and verify that you have good spark. Now real quick, before we get in it too far, you want to verify that your spark plug is in good condition. So I recommend removing it. If you see tons of carbon buildup on there, definitely get it replaced. If you're not quite sure whether or not it's good or bad, you can actually put your multimeter in the mega ohm setting, put one lead on the top of the spark plug, and then you're going to put one lead to ground. If you have any continuity at all, again, this is going to be mega ohms, but if you have any continuity or any reading, that means the spark plug is fouled and needs to be replaced. Now for this bike, we know the ignition system is good, but if you did find a problem, what you want to do is free up your wiring for the ignition system, and there's going to be a little spade connector right here on your coil. You want to disconnect that. And then we have this bullet connector. This is for the kill switch. So the female side, that's going to be going up to the kill switch itself. Male side, that goes down to your stator. So just be aware of that. And from here, we can make some checks. So with this, we're going to do most of the checks just using a multimeter. We're going to be in the ohm setting. Now, one of the most common things to fail on these bikes is the stator. So we're going to start right here and make a check. First thing you want to do, we've got an auto ranging meter, but the spec for the stock stator is going to be 450 to 500 ohms. Now we have a Tusk ignition system. It's heavy duty and it's going to be a different spec. So this one is going to be 540 to 660 ohms. So all you want to do is go from this connector that we had plugged into the coil, and we're going to go to ground and check our meter. So we're 585, and that's right within our Tusk spec, but again, stock 450 to 500 ohms. Now for the next test, we're going to check the power output of the stator. Now this test is optional, and you only need to do it if you're not quite sure whether or not the stator is bad. Maybe you had a questionable ohm reading, something like that. So with this, if you want to do this test, you will need a special tool. It's called a peak-to-peak adapter. It's going to connect right into your multimeter. Now, even though the stator is AC output, if you have a peak-to-peak adapter, you need to be in the DC range, and we're looking at, or we want 150 peak-to-peak volts or higher. If you're in that ballpark, you're probably going to be okay, but if you're much lower, you definitely need to get this replaced. So with this, all you have to do, again, plug the peak-to-peak adapter into your meter, and then you've got the red lead going to either terminal on the wire coming from your stator, and then black lead, that's just going to go to ground. And then from here, we need to put this in the proper range. So DC volts, again, we're going to be in that 150, maybe even 200 volt range. So now we just need to kick the bike over and see what reading we get. All right, so with that, you can see the numbers, they flash up quick, but you can see we're well over 150 volts. So we can go ahead and move on to the next check. The next thing we're going to check is our kill switch. So this actually ties into our stator. Now down here, we've got one wire coming out of the stator, and this one wire supplies power to the ignition coil, and then it splits off into this second wire, and this wire goes up to the kill switch. The kill switch has one more wire coming down right here, and it grounds out on the engine right there. So all the kill switch does is intercept the signal from the stator, and as soon as you hit the button, it grounds it out and it kills power to your ignition coil. So the reason that's important to know is if you have too much resistance in here, it can create some issues with your spark. So what we want to do to check this, we've got this bullet connector. All we're going to do is connect one lead to this and one lead to ground. So with those connected right there, as long as you're not pressing the switch, you should have infinite resistance or an open circuit. But as soon as you hit the switch, that should ground everything out. And ideally you would have 0 ohms. For us, you can see we've got 0.9. But I would say as long as you're an ohm or 2 or less, you should be fine. But if you start seeing 25, 50 ohms or anything higher than that, you've got some issues. So once you get above a couple ohms, you might have some issues with corrosion somewhere in the wires. You could have a loose or corroded grounding bolt. And then I would just take a visual inspection of these wires, see if anything is worn through. And once you've done those inspections and you're still having issues with the ohm meter giving you the correct readings, you'd want to replace this switch. All right, now we're going to check the ignition coil. So again, we've got the Tusk kit. It's a little more heavy duty kit, and how you test this is slightly different. So we'll start with this one, and we're going to check the secondary side of the circuit. So the high tension lead coming out right here. And all we're going to do, we've got our meter in the ohms position. So with this, the meter is auto ranging. We're going to be reading in thousands of ohms or K ohms. So if you have a different meter, make sure it's in the right range. But all we're going to do is ground this out and make sure you have a good ground. So the spec on ours is 8.1 to 9.9 K ohms. We're 9.06. We've got the little K on there, so we know that this ignition coil is good. Now, if you have a stock coil, it's a little different process. Let's take a look. So right here I have a stock ignition coil. First thing you need to know is that these caps, they unscrew. And you've got a separate resistance for the cap versus just the coil itself with that high tension lead. So I'm going to unscrew this, and the cap basically has a wood screw that screws into the end of this wire. So we're just turning it counterclockwise. We'll pull this off, and we're going to test the coil first. So roughly the resistance between ground and the end of the high tension lead, that's going to be anywhere from 2 to 2.4 K ohms. Now with that, we're looking for big problems. Either it's in the ballpark or something should be obviously wrong. So as I measure between those 2 points, we've got 2.179 K ohms, and this one is within spec. And then to measure the cap, the resistance on this is going to be, or should be, anywhere from 4.3 to 5.7 K ohms. And I'm going to remove that boot just to make it easier. So we're 4.226K ohms. So we're just under that 4.3, but I would not be concerned about this cap. Okay, from here I'm going to reinstall this rubber boot. And if you want, you can slide this on first if it helps out, because these caps can be hard to screw on with that rubber boot with all that resistance. So one thing you can do is install the cap. You'll screw this on and you're going to feel it tighten up and get snug. So right there, I just felt this bottom out and it wants to twist the whole wire with it. So I know it's all the way on. Put that rubber boot back on, and if you're going to run this, you could throw it back on your bike. Now with the cap, you want to make sure it's not cracked or damaged. If it is cracked, you're going to have spark jumping from the side of the cap to the closest ground. All right, so those are the checks and inspections that are outlined in your service manual. So if you did have some spark issues, hopefully as you went through those checks, you found out what was going on with your bike. Now there's one thing I do want to mention. So the manual does not give you a way to check the primary side of this coil, and it's not like a typical coil. You can't just put one lead on this post right here and then one lead to ground and get 3 ohms or whatever a normal coil would be. This is a little bit different. We don't have a way to test it. So if you've gone through all of the checks and made sure that your stator's working, your kill switch is working, secondary side is good, you've made sure you don't have any broken wires or corroded wires, then you're going to want to try replacing this coil, because again, we don't have a way to test the primary side. Now, with that being said, if you need any parts for your bike, we have parts available on our website, including that stator upgrade kit, or it's a complete ignition upgrade kit from Tusk. And it's designed to solve a lot of the issues you see on these small KTM 50s. So you might want to check that out. You can head over to the website by clicking the link in the description below. Orders over $75 ship free. And hey, if you have any questions, leave those down in the comments. I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Thanks for watching.